I was standing at gate 32, clutching my boarding pass, when I realized my entire family had already boarded without me. "Ma'am, this flight is closed," the agent said gently, but her voice felt miles away. "My husband Richard, my children, not one call, not one message." I dialed Daniel. Straight to voicemail. Emily. The same. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. They didn't forget me. They left me. And in that moment, standing alone in a crowded airport, I felt something break inside me and something else quietly begin. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, I want you to stay with me. Like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there? I read every single one. I wish I could tell you that what happened at that airport came out of nowhere, but the truth is, it didn't. When I stood there at gate 32, staring at that closed door, something deep inside me whispered, "This has been coming for a long time, Pamela." I just hadn't wanted to see it. For 36 years, I was Mrs. Pamela Turner, wife to Richard Turner, mother to Daniel and Emily, the woman who kept everything running quietly, efficiently, invisibly. I used to believe that meant I was loved. Now, I'm not so sure. When Richard and I first got married, he used to call me his rock. I remember how proud I felt hearing that. I thought it meant I was strong, dependable, essential. But over time, I realized something else. Rocks don't get asked how they feel. They just sit there, carrying weight. Richard handled all of the important things: investments, property, retirement accounts. He'd sit at the dining table with his papers spread out, glasses low on his nose, and say things like, "Don't worry about this, Pam, it's complicated." And I believed him. I handled everything else: groceries, bills, school forms, doctor appointments, birthdays, holidays, the invisible work that keeps a family alive. I told myself it was a fair division, until it wasn't. There was this one Thanksgiving, I remember it clearly. I had spent 2 days cooking, 2 full days. My feet were swollen, my back aching, but when everyone sat down at the table, I felt proud. I watched my family laugh, pass dishes, argue over cranberry sauce like always. And then Daniel said something. "Mom, did you really have to make everything so traditional? We could have just ordered catering. It's 2022. Everyone laughed, even Richard. I laughed too, because that's what I always did. But something inside me cracked just a little. It wasn't what he said. It was how easy it was for him to dismiss what I had done, as if my effort, my care didn't matter. Emily wasn't much different, though. She hid it better. She'd call me almost every day, telling me about her life, her problems, her work drama. "Mom, I don't know what I'd do without you," she'd say. And I'd smile, thinking that meant something. But when I needed her, there was always a reason she couldn't be there. "I'm just so busy right now, Mom. I'll call you back later." "Can we talk tomorrow?" Tomorrow rarely came, and Lisa, Daniel's wife, well, she was polite. Always polite. Too polite. She had this way of smiling at me that never quite reached her eyes. "Oh, Pamela, you're so sweet," she'd say, watching me clear the dishes while she scrolled on her phone. Not Mom, never Mom, just Pamela, like I was optional. I think deep down, I knew something had shifted in our family years ago. I just kept telling myself it was normal. Kids grow up, husbands get busy, life changes. That's what everyone says, right? But then came this trip. It was supposed to be a celebration. Richard's retirement, a luxury resort in California. Ocean views, spa days, fine dining. Daniel and Lisa helped plan it. Emily insisted we all go together. "It'll be perfect, Mom," she said. We haven't had a real family vacation in years. I remember feeling excited, genuinely excited. I went out and bought new clothes for the trip. Nothing fancy, just a few dresses that made me feel like myself again. I even got my hair done the day before we left. Richard barely noticed. "Looks nice," he said without looking up from his phone. Still, I told myself it didn't matter. This trip was about being together. At the airport that morning, everything felt rushed. Too rushed. Richard was walking ahead, pulling his suitcase, barely checking if I was keeping up. Daniel was on his phone, talking about some business deal. Lisa had her headphones in. Emily kept glancing at her watch. "Are we running late?" I asked. "We're fine. Mom," Emily said quickly. Too quickly. When we got to security, Richard handed everyone their passports and boarding passes. Everyone, except me. "I've got yours," he said when I asked. I didn't question it. Why would I? He always handled those things. Security took longer than expected. My bag got flagged. Something about a bottle of lotion I forgot to take out. "Go ahead," I told them. "I'll catch up." Richard hesitated for half a second. Then he nodded. "Don't take too long." And that was it. That was the last time I saw them before the gate. By the time I made it through security, my heart was pounding. Not from the delay, but from something I couldn't quite name. I walked faster, then faster. When I reached gate 32, the screen said, "Boarding complete." I remember laughing, actually laughing, because it felt so ridiculous. "They wouldn't leave me," I said out loud to no one. But then I looked around. No Richard, no Daniel, no Emily, no Lisa, just strangers, and a closed door. Standing there replaying everything in my mind, I realized something that made my stomach drop. That moment at security. That wasn't an accident. They didn't wait. They didn't check. They didn't call. And now here I was, alone, for the first time in decades, completely, undeniably alone. And maybe the most terrifying part, a small, quiet voice inside me wasn't just hurt. It was asking a question I had spent years avoiding. What if they never really needed me the way I thought they did? I don't remember how long I stood there at the gate. Time did something strange in that moment. It stretched and collapsed all at once. 1 second, I was staring at the empty boarding lane. The next, I was gripping my phone so tightly, my knuckles turned white. I called Richard again, straight to voicemail. "Richard, it's me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm at the gate. They've already closed boarding. Where are you? Call me back." I hung up and immediately dialed Daniel. No answer. Then Emily. Voicemail again. It wasn't just that they weren't picking up. It was the silence. The kind of silence that doesn't feel accidental. The kind that feels deliberate. I walked back to the counter, my chest tight, my thoughts racing. "Excuse me?" I said to the gate agent, forcing a polite smile. "There must be some mistake. My family was on this flight, but I..." She gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Not rude, not cold. "Just excuse me," I said to the gate agent, forcing a polite smile. "There must be some mistake. My family was on this flight, but I..." She gave me a look I couldn't quite read. Not rude, not cold, just careful. "Can I see your boarding pass, ma'am?" I handed it to her with trembling fingers. She scanned it, then frowned slightly. "This ticket was reissued this morning." I blinked. "I'm sorry, what? It looks like your original seat was changed." She continued, turning her screen slightly. "You were moved to a later flight. Departure at 2:45 p.m. I stared at her. "That's not possible," I said. "I didn't change anything." She hesitated. "It shows the change was made online. About 3 hours ago." 3 hours ago. That was before we even left the house. A cold feeling crept up my spine. Can you see who made the change? I asked quietly. She shook her head. I'm sorry, ma'am. It just shows it was done through the account holder. The account holder? That would be Richard. Of course it would be Richard. I let out a small laugh, sharp, brittle, unfamiliar even to my own ears. So, let me get this straight, I said slowly. My family boards the original flight and am reassigned to a later one without anyone telling me. The agent didn't answer. She didn't have to. The truth was already sitting there between us. Heavy, unavoidable. I didn't know. I whispered more to myself than to her. And suddenly, everything from that morning started replaying in my mind, but differently this time. Not as random moments, as pieces of a pattern. Richard insisting he'd handle the tickets. Emily rushing me through breakfast. Daniel checking his phone, avoiding eye contact. Lisa smiling that tight little smile. And me trusting all of them, always trusting. I felt something shift inside me, not a clean break like before, but something deeper. A realization settling into place. This wasn't a mistake. This was a decision. They had known. All of them. Mom, the agent said gently. Would you like me to help you rebook anything? I looked at her, my vision slightly blurred. Yes, I said automatically. I guess I have to take the later flight, she nodded. You're already confirmed. You'll just need to check in at the new gate closer to departure. I nodded too, though I barely processed her words. My body moved before my mind could catch up. I stepped away from the counter and found an empty seat nearby. Then I sat down. And for the first time since this all started, I stopped moving. Airports are strange places to fall apart. Everyone is going somewhere. Everyone has a destination, a purpose. And there I was, sitting in the middle of it all, feeling like I had just been left behind. Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. I stared at my phone again. No missed calls, no messages, nothing. I opened our family group chat. The last message was from Emily the night before. Can't wait for tomorrow. This is going to be amazing. I swallowed hard. Amazing. I typed a message. Where are you? I'm still at the airport. I stared at it for a long moment before hitting send. 3 dots didn't appear. No one responded. Minutes passed. Then 10. Then 20. Still nothing. I could feel the tears building, pressing against the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Not here. Not like this. Instead, I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. And that's when another memory surfaced, one I hadn't thought about in years. It was Daniel's college graduation. We were all there, Richard, Emily, me. After the ceremony, we went out to dinner. Daniel was talking about his job offer, his future, all the plans he had. I remember reaching across the table, placing my hand over his. I'm so proud of you, I said. He smiled, but it wasn't quite at me. It was past me. Thanks, Mom, he said. Dad really helped me figure everything out. Dad, not us, not you. Dad. I remember pulling my hand back slowly, pretending it didn't matter. But it did. It always did. Back in the present, I opened my eyes and stared at the departure board across the terminal. Flights leaving, flights arriving, people moving forward, and me? I felt stuck, like my life had just paused without my permission. Then my phone buzzed. My heart jumped. I grabbed it quickly, my breath catching. It was Richard. Finally. I answered immediately. Richard. Pamela, where are you? He cut in, his voice sharp, irritated. I froze. I'm at the airport, I said. They said my ticket was changed. Well, obviously, he snapped. You took too long at security. We couldn't hold up the entire flight for you. I blinked. Took too long. I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Richard, my ticket was changed. They said it was done this morning. There was a pause. Just a second. But I heard it. That hesitation. You must be mistaken, he said quickly. Look, we're already on the plane. We'll figure it out when you get here. We'll figure it out, yes. Just take the next flight. Don't make this into a big deal, Pamela. Don't make this into a big deal. I felt something inside me go very, very quiet. Did you change my ticket? I asked. Another pause. Longer this time. Pamela, this isn't the time. Did you change my ticket? I repeated louder now. He exhaled sharply. It made more sense this way, he said. You were slowing things down. This was easier. Easier. For who? I closed my eyes. Richard, you left me behind. No, we didn't leave you behind, he said, his tone defensive now. You're being dramatic. You're coming on the next flight, aren't you? I didn't answer, because in that moment, something inside me finally understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an accident. And it wasn't even cruelty in the way I used to think of it. It was worse. It was indifference. I was inconvenient. And for the first time in my life, I realized something that scared me more than being alone in that airport. I had spent decades making myself small so no one else would be uncomfortable. And now they had decided I was still too much. I don't remember ending the call. 1 second, Richard was still talking something about not ruining the trip. And the next, I was just staring at my phone, the screen gone dark in my hand. It was strange. I expected to feel rage or heartbreak, or at least something loud and overwhelming. But instead, there was silence. A deep, unsettling silence inside me, like something had finally stopped trying. I sat there for a long time watching people pass by. A young couple laughing over coffee, a mother adjusting her child's backpack, a man rushing to his gate, apologizing into his phone. Everyone had somewhere to go. Everyone belonged somewhere. And me? For the first time in my life, I wasn't sure I did. My phone buzzed again. A message this time. Emily. Mom, what's going on? Dad said you missed the flight. I stared at the screen. Missed the flight. That's how they were framing it. That's the story they were telling. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I could explain everything. I could tell her the truth. I could demand answers. Instead, I typed something simple. I didn't miss it. My ticket was changed. I watched as the message delivered. A few seconds later, the typing dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, her response came through. Oh, I didn't know that. Dad handled everything. Just take the next flight, okay? We'll see you when you get here. I read it twice. Then a third time. There was no anger, no confusion, no concern, just dismissal. Like it didn't matter, like I didn't matter. I locked my phone and placed it in my lap. And that's when something shifted again. Not in a dramatic, explosive way, but quietly, decisively. For 36 years, I had been adjusting myself to fit into their lives. Their schedules, their needs, their comfort. And now, sitting there in that airport, I realized something I had never allowed myself to consider before. What if I didn't have to? What if for once I made a decision that wasn't about them? The thought felt foreign, almost dangerous, but also strangely freeing. I stood up slowly, my legs a little unsteady at first. Then I picked up my bag. Not to go to the new gate, but in the opposite direction, toward the main terminal. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, only that I wasn't going to sit there and wait for another flight they had decided for me. I walked past rows of departure screens, past busy restaurants, past shops filled with overpriced souvenirs. And then I saw it. A large sign above a sleek, quiet entrance. First class lounge. I stopped. I had never been inside one before. In all our years of traveling, Richard always handled the bookings, and we always flew economy. "It's practical," he'd say. "No need to waste money." But suddenly I wondered, was it really about practicality, or was it just another way to remind me of my place? I hesitated for a moment. Then I walked up to the desk. The woman behind it smiled politely. "May I help you?" I swallowed, feeling slightly out of place. "I was wondering how much it costs to access the lounge." She glanced at her screen, then back at me. "You can purchase a day pass for $75, or if you're flying, first class access is included." First class. The words lingered in the air. I had never even considered it before. Not seriously. That was Richard's world, his decisions, his domain. But now I took a breath. "What flights do you have available today to California?" I asked. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. "There's a first-class seat available on a 1:10 p.m. departure," she said. "It's one of the last seats." I felt my heart start to race. That was earlier than my reassigned flight. I glanced at the time. I could make it. Barely. How much, I asked. She told me. It was more than I had ever spent on myself in one moment. For a split second, the old voice inside me spoke up. "That's too expensive. It's unnecessary." Richard wouldn't approve. And then another voice, quieter but stronger, answered. "Richard isn't here." I straightened my shoulders. "I'll take it," I said. The words surprised even me. The woman smiled, tapping a few more keys. "All right, you'll just need your ID." As I handed it over, I felt something unfamiliar rising inside me. Not guilt, not fear, something else. Control. For the first time in decades, I was making a decision for myself. No one else's opinion, no one else's permission. Just me. A few minutes later, she handed me my new boarding pass. "Gate 14, she said, "and you're welcome to use the lounge before boarding." I looked down at the ticket. First class. My name printed clearly across it. Pamela Turner. For a moment, I just stood there staring at it, because it felt like more than just a seat upgrade. It felt like a line being crossed, a boundary I had never dared to step over before. "Thank you," I said softly. Then I turned and walked toward the lounge. Inside, everything was different, quieter, calmer. There were comfortable chairs, soft lighting, people speaking in low voices. A buffet of food I didn't have to prepare. Coffee I didn't have to pour for someone else first. I found a seat by the window and sat down slowly. Then I exhaled. A long, deep breath I didn't realize I had been holding for years. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Daniel. "Mom, Dad said you're making a big deal out of nothing. Just get on the next flight. Don't start something over this." I stared at the message. Then I typed back. "I'm not on the next flight." A pause. "What do you mean?" I looked out the window, watching a plane take off in the distance. Then I replied, "I'm taking a different one." Another pause. Then, "Why?" I smiled faintly. Because for the first time, I had an answer that didn't revolve around them. Because I can. I put my phone down and didn't wait for a response. because something inside me had already decided. This trip, it wasn't going to be about them anymore. It was going to be about me. And they had no idea what they had just set in motion. The first-class seat felt unreal. I had walked onto that plane half expecting someone to stop me, to question me, to say there had been a mistake, because for so long, that's how my life worked. If something felt too good, it probably wasn't meant for me. But no one stopped me. The flight attendant smiled warmly as she checked my boarding pass. "Welcome aboard, Miss Turner." Ms. Turner, not Pam, not Mom, just me. I nodded, a little unsure of myself, and followed her down the aisle. The cabin was quieter than anything I had ever experienced on a plane. Spacious seats, soft lighting, people speaking in low, calm voices. No rushing, no chaos, no one needing anything from me. I found my seat wide, comfortable, with more space than I knew what to do with. For a moment, I just stood there staring at it. Then I slowly sat down, and something strange happened. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel like I had taken something I didn't deserve. I felt calm. A flight attendant approached almost immediately. "Can I offer you something to drink before takeoff?" I hesitated. In all my years of flying, no one had ever asked me that. "You'll have coffee," I said almost automatically. She smiled. "Of course. We'll bring that right away." As she walked away, I leaned back in my seat and let out a small breath. This wasn't just about the seat. It was about what it represented. For years, I had accepted less. Not because I had to, but because I believed that's where I belonged. And now, I wasn't so sure. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it. Richard. I considered ignoring it, but I answered. "Pamela, what are you doing?" he demanded immediately. "Daniel said you're not taking the scheduled flight." I looked out the window, watching the ground crew move below us. "I'm on a different flight," I said calmly. "What do you mean, a different flight?" he snapped. "We already arranged everything. You arranged everything." The words hung in the air. "I know," I said. "That's the problem." There was a pause. "What is that supposed to mean?" he asked, his voice tightening. "It means," I continued, my voice steady, "that you made a decision for me without telling me." Again. "Pamela, this is not the time for one of your emotional speeches," he said sharply. "We're already at cruising altitude. We can't deal with this right now." I almost smiled. Of course. My feelings were always inconvenient. "Then don't deal with it," I said. "I'll see you when I get there." Before he could respond, I ended the call. My hands trembled slightly as I set the phone down. Not from fear, from something else. Adrenaline. I had never spoken to Richard like that before, never ended a conversation on my terms. And yet the world didn't collapse. The plane didn't fall out of the sky. Nothing terrible happened, except something inside me felt lighter. The flight attendant returned with my coffee. "Here you go," she said gently. "Thank you," I replied. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, letting the heat ground me. For the next hour, I sat quietly watching the clouds outside the window. And for the first time in a long time, I thought about myself, not as a wife, not as a mother, but as Pamela. What did I want? The question felt unfamiliar, almost uncomfortable, because the truth was, I didn't know. I had spent so many years focusing on everyone else's needs that mine had slowly faded into the background. Until now. Another memory surfaced. This one from years ago. I had once mentioned wanting to take a painting class. Just something small, something for myself. Richard had laughed. "You don't have time for hobbies, Pam," he said. "You're already busy enough." And that was the end of that. I never brought it up again. Sitting there now, thousands of feet in the air, I felt something tighten in my chest. Not sadness, regret. How many things had I given up without even questioning it? How many pieces of myself had I quietly set aside just to keep everything running smoothly? I took a slow sip of my coffee, then another, and something inside me began to shift again. Not just awareness, decision. When the plane began its descent, I felt different. Not completely changed, not healed, but awake. As we landed, my phone lit up with messages. Richard, Daniel, Emily, all asking variations of the same thing. Where are you? When are you arriving? Why are you doing this? I read them, but I didn't respond. Not yet, because for once I wasn't rushing to fix their confusion. I wasn't rushing to smooth things over. I wasn't rushing at all. When I stepped off the plane, the California air felt warm against my skin. Different from home. Lighter somehow. I walked through the terminal, slowly taking my time. No one was there to meet me. Of course they weren't. They were expecting me hours later. I could have called them, told them I had arrived early, asked where they were, but I didn't. Instead, I walked to the baggage claim, picked up my suitcase, and headed outside. The hotel address was saved on my phone. A luxury resort by the ocean. The trip they had planned. The trip I was still technically part of. I hailed a car and gave the driver the address. As we pulled away from the airport, I looked out the window at the unfamiliar streets. Palm trees lined the roads. Sunlight reflected off glass buildings. Everything felt new, not just the place. Me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Emily calling. I let it ring, then stop, then ring again. Finally I answered. "Mom, where are you?" she asked, her voice tinged with something I couldn't quite place. "We've been trying to reach you." "I landed," I said, simply. "You landed? What do you mean you landed? Your flight wasn't supposed to arrive until I took an earlier one." I interrupted. There was silence. Then, "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked out at the ocean appearing in the distance. Because for once, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. "I guess," I said slowly. I wanted to see what it felt like to make my own decision. Another silence. Longer this time. "Mom, is everything okay?" she asked, her voice softer now. I thought about that question. Really thought about it. Then I answered honestly. For the first time in a long time. I think it might be. And as I ended the call, I realized something important. This wasn't just a trip anymore. This was the beginning of something they didn't expect, and something I had spent my whole life avoiding. Change. The resort was even more beautiful than I expected. As the car pulled up to the entrance, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and hesitation settle in my chest. Tall glass doors, palm trees swaying in the warm breeze, the faint sound of waves crashing somewhere beyond the buildings. It all felt like a world I wasn't quite used to stepping into. The driver opened my door. "We're here, ma'am." I nodded and stepped out slowly, adjusting my grip on my suitcase. For a moment, I just stood there, looking up at the place my family had chosen without me. And now, here I was, before them, on my terms. I walked inside. The lobby was bright open, filled with soft music and quiet conversation. People checked in, couples laughed, staff moved with calm efficiency. No one knew me. No one expected anything from me. And somehow, that felt freeing. I approached the front desk. "Hi," I said, offering a small smile. "I have a reservation under Turner." The receptionist typed quickly, then nodded. "Yes, Mrs. Turner. We've been expecting you." "Hi," I said, offering a small smile. I have a reservation under Turner. The receptionist typed quickly, then nodded. Yes, Mrs. Turner. We've been expecting you. Expecting you? That word caught me off guard. For a second, I wondered if Richard had informed them of my delay. But the woman continued. You're part of a group reservation. Your family checked in earlier this afternoon. Of course they did. I forced a polite smile. Can you tell me which rooms they're in? She hesitated. I can connect you to them or... That's okay. I interrupted gently. I'll find them later. Because the truth was, I wasn't ready yet. She handed me my room key. Suite 814. Ocean View. Ocean View? I almost laughed at the irony. For years I had settled for whatever room was practical. Now suddenly, I had the view. I thanked her and took the elevator up. The hallway was quiet, plush carpet beneath my feet, soft lighting guiding the way. When I reached my room, I paused. My hand hovered over the keycard slot. Then I slid it in. The door clicked open, and I stepped inside. The room was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, a large bed neatly made, a small sitting area by the window, sunlight pouring in like it had been waiting just for me. I set my suitcase down slowly, then walked toward the window. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, calm, unbothered, free. I don't know how long I stood there. Minutes, maybe longer. Because for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't thinking about anyone else. No one needed me. No one was waiting for me. No one was disappointed in me. I was just there. My phone buzzed. Of course it did. I turned away from the window and picked it up. Richard. Again. This time I let it ring until it stopped. Then came a message. Where are you? We just checked in. Call me. Another one from Daniel. This is getting ridiculous, Mom. And then Emily. We're in the lobby. Come down when you get here. I stared at the messages. They assumed I had just arrived. They assumed I would come to them, like always. I placed the phone down on the table and made a decision. Not yet. I wasn't going to rush downstairs. I wasn't going to explain myself the moment I walked in. For once, they could wait. I walked into the bathroom, turned on the sink, and splashed cool water onto my face. Then I looked at myself in the mirror. Really looked. There were lines I didn't used to notice. Tiredness I had ignored, but also something new. Strength. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, present. I changed into something more comfortable, brushed my hair, and sat down by the window again. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting warm colors across the water. And for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt something close to peace. Then came the knock. Sharp, unexpected. I froze. Another knock. Mom, I know you're in there. Emily, of course. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, then stood up and walked to the door. When I opened it, Emily was standing there, her expression a mix of concern and confusion. You're here, she said. I am, I replied calmly. She stepped inside without waiting. I don't understand what's going on, she said, turning to face me. Why didn't you tell us you took an earlier flight? I leaned lightly against the wall, watching her. Would it have changed anything? I asked. She frowned. What do you mean? I said slowly. Would you have done anything differently if you knew? I leaned lightly against the wall, watching her. Would it have changed anything? I asked. She frowned. What do you mean? I said slowly. Would you have done anything differently if you knew? She hesitated, and in that hesitation, I had my answer. "Mom, this isn't fair," she said quickly. "We thought you missed the flight." Dad said, "Your dad said a lot of things," I interrupted gently. Her expression shifted slightly. "What's that supposed to mean?" I took a breath, then another, because this moment mattered. "Emily," I said, my voice calm but firm, "did you know my ticket had been changed?" She blinked. "What?" "No, I didn't." "Did you ask?" I pressed. Silence. She looked away, and there it was again. That quiet truth. Not cruelty, not even intention. Just absence. "I didn't think to," she admitted softly. Of course she didn't. Because for years I had made it easy not to. I nodded slowly. "Exactly." She crossed her arms, defensive now. "Okay, but you're here now, right? So why are you acting like this is such a big deal?" I stared at her. Really stared. Because that question said everything. "Because it is," I said quietly. She shook her head. "It was just a mix-up, Mom." "No," I said, firmer this time. "It wasn't." Her eyes widened slightly. Then what was it? I held her gaze. "It was a decision," I said. "One that didn't include me." She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it. For the first time, she didn't have an immediate answer. And for the first time, I didn't rush to fill the silence. "I'm tired, Emily," I said after a moment. "I just got here. I need some time." She looked at me, searching my face for what I wasn't sure. The version of me she was used to, the one who smoothed things over, the one who apologized first. She didn't find her. "Fine," she said finally. "But we're having dinner at 7. Don't be late. Don't be late." I almost smiled at the familiarity of it. "I'll see," I replied. Her expression tightened, but she didn't argue. She turned and walked out, closing the door behind her. And just like that, I was alone again. But this time, it didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like space. And as I walked back to the window, watching the last light of the day fade into the ocean, I realized something important. They still thought this was temporary. A mood, a reaction, something I would eventually get over. They didn't understand. This wasn't a moment. This was a shift, and they were about to feel it. I didn't go to dinner at 7. I knew they would be there. Richard sitting at the head of the table like always. Daniel checking his phone between bites, Emily trying to keep things normal by pretending nothing had happened. And me? I was supposed to slide back into my seat like I always did. Smile, apologize, smooth everything over. But that version of me didn't show up. Instead, I stayed in my room. At first, I told myself I just needed more time, that I would go down later, maybe catch dessert, maybe avoid the tension. But deep down, I knew the truth. I wasn't avoiding them. I was choosing myself. I ordered room service for the first time in my life without asking anyone if it was too expensive or unnecessary. A simple meal, grilled salmon, vegetables, a glass of white wine. When it arrived, I sat by the window and ate slowly, watching the ocean turn dark under the night sky. It wasn't just peaceful. It was mine. No interruptions, no one asking for anything, no one criticizing how I held my fork or what I chose to eat. Just me. Hal fork or what I chose to eat. Just me. Halfway through dinner, my phone started buzzing again. This time, I didn't ignore it. I picked it up. A group message. "Richard, where are you?" "Daniel." We've been waiting. Way through dinner, my phone started buzzing again. This time, I didn't ignore it. I picked it up. A group message. Richard. Where are you? Daniel, we've been waiting. Emily? Mom, this isn't funny. Funny. I stared at that word. For a moment, I felt something sharp rise in my chest. Then I typed. I'm having dinner. A pause. Then Richard replied almost instantly. With who I looked down at my plate, then back at the ocean. And I answered honestly. Myself. There was a long silence in the chat after that. Long enough that I could almost feel the confusion on the other end. Then Daniel. What does that even mean? I set my phone down without responding, because for once, I didn't feel the need to explain something that simple. After dinner, I poured the last of my wine and stepped out onto the balcony. The air was cooler now, the sound of waves louder in the quiet. I leaned against the railing and closed my eyes. And that's when it hit me. Not anger, not sadness. Grief. Grief for all the years I had spent shrinking myself. Grief for all the moments I had convinced myself that this is just how things are. Grief for the version of me that never got to ask, what do I want? A tear slipped down my cheek before I could stop it. Then another. I didn't wipe them away. I let them fall, because for once I wasn't pretending to be okay. The knock came again, later this time, slower, heavier. I didn't need to ask who it was. Pamela? Richard, his voice through the door. Firm, controlled, slightly irritated. I opened my eyes, took a breath, and walked inside. When I opened the door, he stood there, exactly as I expected, posture straight, expression, tight eyes already judging. We need to talk, he said. Of course we did. I stepped aside and let him in. He walked past me into the room, looking around briefly as if assessing the space. You got a better room, he noted. It wasn't a compliment, it was a calculation. Yes, I said simply. He turned to face me. What is going on with you? He asked. First the flight, now this dinner situation. What are you trying to prove? I crossed my arms lightly, not in defense, but my arms lightly not in defense, but in steadiness. I'm not trying to prove anything, I said. Then what is this? He pressed. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're overreacting to a simple mistake, in steadiness. I'm not trying to prove anything, I said. Then what is this? He pressed. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're overreacting to a simple mistake. There it was again. Simple mistake. I shook my head slowly. You still don't get it. Then explain it to me, he said, his tone sharp. I looked at him. Really looked. At the man I had spent decades accommodating, supporting, excusing. You left me at the airport, I said. His jaw tightened. That's not what happened. No, I stepped closer, because from my perspective, I was standing there alone with a ticket I didn't book for a flight I didn't choose after decisions were made about me without even telling me. We were trying to make things easier, he snapped. For who, I asked quietly. He didn't answer, because he didn't have one. You always do this, I continued. You decide what's best, and everyone else is just supposed to go along with it. That's called leadership, he said. I almost laughed. No, I said softly. That's called control. The word hung between us, heavy, uncomfortable. His expression hardened. Is that what you think of me? I held his gaze, held his. I think I said slowly that you've been making decisions for me for so long, You don't even realize I have a voice anymore. Silence. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Not anger. Not yet. Something else. Uncertainty. Then it was gone. "You're being dramatic," he said flatly. And just like that, the moment passed. I exhaled slowly. Of course, this was the pattern. Minimize. Dismiss. Move on. "I'm not going to argue with you," I said. "Good," he replied quickly. "Then we can put this behind us and enjoy the rest of the trip." I shook my head. "No," I said. His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, no? I said, my voice steady. "I'm not putting this behind me." "Good," he replied quickly. "Then we can put this behind us and enjoy the rest of the trip." I shook my head. "No," I said. His eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, no?" I mean, I said, my voice steady. "I'm not putting this behind me." The air in the room shifted. Tense. Sharp. "What exactly are you saying?" he asked. I took a breath. Because this was the moment, the line. "I'm saying," I replied, "that things are going to be different from now on." He stared at me, as if trying to figure out whether I was serious, as if waiting for me to back down. I didn't. "Different?" Howie asked. I met his gaze. "I'm going to start making my own decisions," as if trying to figure out whether I was serious, as if waiting for me to back down. I didn't. "Different how?" he asked. I met his gaze. "I'm going to start making my own decisions," I said, "about my time, my choices, my life." A beat. Then he scoffed. "You already do." The denial was almost automatic, and that's when I knew. He truly didn't see it, didn't see me. "No," I said quietly. "I haven't." Another silence. Longer this time. He looked at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. Maybe I was. Finally, he shook his head. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You're tired. You're emotional. We'll talk about this tomorrow." He looked at me like I was someone he didn't recognize. Maybe I was. Finally, he shook his head. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You're tired. You're emotional. We'll talk about this tomorrow. Tomorrow." Another delay. Another dismissal. I stepped back toward the door and opened it. "I'm done talking for tonight," I said. He didn't move at first. Then slowly, reluctantly, he walked toward the door. As he passed me, he stopped. "This better not ruin the trip," he said. I looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to reassure him. "If it does," I said calmly, "then maybe it wasn't much of a trip to begin with." He stared at me for a moment longer, then walked out. The door closed behind him, and I stood there in the quiet, heart racing, hands slightly shaking. But inside, there was no fear, only clarity, because the truth was something had already been ruined. Just not the trip, the illusion. And once that's gone, there's no going back. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. That alone was unusual. Back home, I always woke up because someone needed something. Richard's schedule, Daniel's last-minute requests, Emily's calls. But here, no one knocked. No one called. No one expected anything. I opened my eyes slowly and just lay there, listening. The faint sound of the ocean, the quiet hum of the air conditioning. my own breathing. It felt unfamiliar, but not uncomfortable, peaceful. I sat up, wrapped the robe around me, and walked toward the window. The sky was just beginning to lighten soft shades of pink and gold spreading across the horizon. I stepped out onto the balcony. The air was cool, fresh, carrying the scent of salt. And for a moment, I just stood there, watching the world wake up without me having to control any part of it. That's when I realized something. I didn't have a plan for today. No itinerary, no schedule, no responsibilities. Just a day. And instead of that making me anxious like it normally would, it made me curious. What would I choose? I went back inside, got dressed, and left my phone on the nightstand. That was new too. For years, my phone had been like a leash, always within reach, always ready to respond. Today, it could wait. I made my way down to the lobby, then outside toward the beach. The sand was cool beneath my feet as I slipped off my sandals. A few early risers were already there, walking, jogging, sitting quietly with coffee. No one noticed me, and for once, I liked that. I walked slowly along the shoreline, letting the waves brush against my feet. Each step felt intentional, not rushed, not directed, just mine. After a while, I found a small beachside cafe and ordered breakfast. Eggs, toast, fresh fruit, coffee. Simple, but it felt like a luxury. Not because of the food, because of the choice. As I sat there watching the ocean, I heard a voice beside me. "Mind if I sit here?" I looked up. A woman around my age stood there holding a cup of coffee, her expression warm but respectful. "Of course," I said, gesturing to the empty chair. She smiled and sat down. "Beautiful morning," she said. "It is," I agreed. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment before she spoke again. "You're traveling alone?" she asked gently. I hesitated, then smiled slightly. "Yes and no," she chuckled softly. "I know that feeling." I glanced at her. "You do?" She nodded. "My husband used to travel with me everywhere," she said. "Or rather, I traveled with him." There was something in the way she said it. Familiar. "He made all the plans I asked. All of them," she replied. "Flights, hotels, restaurants. Even what I ordered, sometimes I felt a small, knowing smile form." "And you went along with it," I said. "Of course I did," she said lightly. "It was easier." Easier. That word again. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she looked at me. "But easier doesn't always mean better, does it?" I shook my head slowly. "No, it doesn't." She took a sip of her coffee. "So, what changed?" I asked before I could stop myself. She smiled. "He left," she said simply. The words landed softly but heavily. "I'm sorry," I said. She waved it off gently. "Don't be." It took me losing him to realize I had lost myself long before that. I felt something tighten in my chest, because I understood that feeling more than I wanted to admit. And now I asked. She looked out at the ocean. "Now I make my own plans," she said. "Even if they're not perfect." I smiled faintly. "I think I'm just starting to learn that." She glanced at me. "Well," she said, standing up, "you picked a good place to start." Before I could respond, she added, "Don't wait too long." Then she walked away, leaving me with those words. Don't wait too long. I sat there for a while after that, thinking about everything, about the years, about the patterns, about how easily I had accepted a life where I wasn't the one making choices, and how hard it suddenly felt to start. But also how necessary. Eventually, I went back to my room. As soon as I picked up my phone, it lit up. Missed calls, messages, Richard, Daniel, Emily, of course. I opened the messages. Richard breakfast at 9. Don't disappear again, Daniel. Mom, this is getting out of hand. Emily. Please just come talk to us. I stared at the screen, and for a moment, the old instinct kicked in. Go. Fix it. Make things normal again. But then I thought about the woman at the cafe, about her words. Don't wait too long. I set the phone down and made another decision. I wasn't going to rush back into their version of normal. Not today. Instead, I picked up the resort brochure from the desk. Spa, art classes, guided walks. I paused at that. Art classes. A small, almost forgotten part of me stirred. Painting. The thing I had given up years ago without a second thought. Without even asking if I could still have it. There was a session starting at 10. I glanced at the time. 9:15. Enough time. Before I could overthink it, I signed up. The class was held in a bright studio overlooking the ocean. Easels lined the room canvases waiting. Paints arranged neatly on tables. It smelled faintly of acrylic and something else possibility. I hesitated at the door. Because this felt vulnerable. Not just trying something new. Trying something I had once wanted. It smelled faintly of acrylic and something else possibility. I hesitated at the door. Because this felt vulnerable. Not just trying something new. Trying something I had once wanted and been told didn't matter. First time? The instructor asked kindly. I nodded. Then you're exactly where you're supposed to be, she said. I took a seat, picked up a brush, and for the first time in decades, I painted. At first it was awkward, my hand unsure, my movements hesitant, but slowly something loosened, something opened. I wasn't thinking about dinner, or Richard, or expectations. I was just creating. When the class ended, I stepped back and looked at my canvas. It wasn't perfect, not even close, but it was mine, and that mattered more than I could explain. As I cleaned up, my phone buzzed again in my bag. I didn't check it, not yet, because for once I had something more important to hold on to. Myself. And as I walked out of that studio, paint still faintly on my fingers, I realized something that both excited and terrified me. This wasn't just about standing up to them anymore. This was about becoming someone they didn't know how to control. And I wasn't sure how they were going to handle that. But for the first time, I was ready to find out. I didn't check my phone until late afternoon. Not because I forgot, because I chose not to. That alone felt like a quiet rebellion. When I finally picked it up, I already knew what I'd see. And I wasn't wrong. Missed calls. More messages. The tone had changed. Richard. This is getting ridiculous. When I finally picked it up, I already knew what I'd see. And I wasn't wrong. Missed calls. More messages. The tone had changed. Richard. This is getting ridiculous. Daniel. Mom, you can't just ignore us. Emily. Please answer. I'm worried. I stared at that last one a little longer. Emily had always been the bridge, the peacemaker, the one who softened things after Richard made them hard. But even she had learned to adjust instead of question. Just like I had. For years, I typed slowly. I'm okay. I just needed space. I hesitated before hitting send, because I knew that word space was going to land like a threat, not a need, not a boundary, a problem. I sent it anyway. Almost immediately, my phone rang. Emily. Of course. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Mom? Her voice came quickly, relief mixed with tension. Where have you been? I told you, I said calmly. I needed some time. You didn't come to breakfast or lunch, she said. We've been looking for you. We. Always we. I've been around, I replied. Just not with you. A pause. That's exactly what I mean, she said. Why are you avoiding us? I closed my eyes for a second, because that word avoiding wasn't right. I'm not avoiding you, I said. I'm just not centering my day around you. Silence, then softer. That doesn't sound like you. I almost smiled. I know. Another pause, longer this time. Dad is really upset, she added carefully. There it was, the real message. Of course he was. When isn't he? I said quietly. Mom, she sighed. Can you just come down for dinner tonight? Please, we need to talk. I leaned back against the chair, looking out at the fading light outside my window. Dinner, another table, another conversation where I would be expected to explain myself and then be told I was wrong. But something in Emily's voice stopped me. Not pressure, not manipulation, something else. Fear. And I realized this wasn't just uncomfortable for me. It was unfamiliar for them, too. All right, I said finally. He'll come to dinner. Relief rushed through the phone. Thank you, she said quickly. 7 o'clock. After we hung up, I sat there for a while, preparing, not for a fight, but for something harder, standing my ground without losing myself. At 7, I walked into the restaurant. They were already there. Of course they were. Richard sat exactly where he always did, center of the table, back straight, control in every detail. Daniel beside him, arms crossed, jaw tight. Emily across from them, glancing up the moment she saw me. Mom, she said softly. I nodded and took my seat. No one spoke for a few seconds. The tension sat between us like a fourth person at the table. Finally, Richard broke the silence. So he said, folding his hands, Are you ready to stop this little protest? There it was. I felt something inside me settle, not flare, not explode, just settle. This isn't a protest, I said calmly. Then what is it? Daniel cut in. Because from where we're sitting, you've been acting completely out of character. Out of character. I looked at him, and for a moment, I saw a boy, not a man. A boy who had grown up watching his father lead and his mother follow, and thinking that was normal. Maybe I said slowly, this is exactly who I am, and you're just not used to it. He frowned. That doesn't make sense. It does, I replied. You've just never had to see it before. Richard leaned forward slightly. Let's stop speaking in circles, he said. What exactly do you want? A simple question, but one no one had ever asked me before. Not really. I took a breath. I want to be included in decisions that affect me, I said. I want to be respected, and I want to make my own choices without being made to feel like I'm doing something wrong. Silence. Then Daniel let out a short laugh. That's what this is about, he said. Mom, you're overthinking this. I felt the old reflex rise. Back down? Smooth it over. But I didn't. No, I said. I've been underthinking it for years. That shut him up. Emily looked between us, her eyes searching. Okay, she said gently. Then let's fix it. We can do better. We, again. I shook my head. It's not that simple. Why not, she asked. Because it's not just about this trip, I said. It's about a pattern, a long one. Okay, she said gently. Then let's fix it. We can do better. We, again. I shook my head. It's not that simple. Why not, she asked. Because it's not just about this trip, I said. It's about a pattern, a long one. Richard's expression hardened again. You're rewriting history now, he said. No, I replied quietly. I'm finally seeing it clearly. The waiter approached, hesitated, then asked if we were ready to order. No one answered right away. Finally, I picked up the menu. I'll have the sea bass, I said. It was a small thing, but it mattered. No one suggested something else. No one corrected me. And that silence, it felt different. Dinner continued, but the tone had shifted. Careful, measured, like everyone was walking across thin ice. At one point, Daniel spoke again. So, what happens now? He asked. You just do your own thing? I looked at him. Yes, I said simply. And where does that leave us? He pressed. I paused. Because that was the real question. And maybe the real fear. It leaves you, I said, having to adjust to me, the way I've been adjusting to you for years. No one spoke after that. Not for a long time. And in that silence, something changed. Not fixed. Not healed. But exposed. Because for the first time, they couldn't pretend everything was fine. After dinner, we stood outside the restaurant. No one rushed to say goodbye. No one knew what to say. Finally, Emily stepped forward and hugged me, tighter than usual. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. I closed my eyes for a moment. You won't, I said softly. But you might have to meet a different version of me. She pulled back, searching my face. I don't know if Dad can handle that, she admitted. I glanced over at Richard, who stood a few steps away, already distant. Then, maybe I said quietly, that's something he needs to learn. As I walked back to my room that night, I realized something important. This wasn't going to be one conversation, or one moment. It was going to be a process. Uncomfortable, messy, possibly painful, but necessary. Because the truth was, I wasn't just changing my behavior. I was changing the rules. And not everyone benefits when the rules change. The next morning, everything felt different. Not calmer, not better, just exposed, like something had been cracked open at that dinner table, and now there was no way to pretend it hadn't. I didn't rush to leave my room. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to sit with discomfort instead of fixing it. That alone felt like growth. Around mid-morning, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a call. It was a message from Daniel. Can we talk just us? I stared at it longer than I expected. Daniel had never asked for just us. He was always part of the group. Part of the we. I typed back. Where? He replied almost instantly. Pool bar. Noon. Short. Direct. Very him. I arrived a few minutes early. The pool area was lively families, laughing music, playing, people relaxing. Normal. That word felt strange now. Daniel showed up right on time. He looked tense, not angry like before. Something else, uncertain. Hey, he said, sitting down across from me. Hi, I replied. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he exhaled. I don't really know how to do this, he admitted. I raised an eyebrow slightly. Do what? Talk to you like this, he said. Without everyone else. That surprised me more than I expected. Neither do I said honestly. That seemed to ease something in him. A little. He leaned back in his chair. So you really think we've been what? Controlling you? He asked. The word sounded uncomfortable in his mouth. I think I said carefully you've gotten used to a version of me that didn't push back. He frowned. That's not the same thing. No, I agreed. But it leads to the same result. He looked down at the table, tapping his fingers lightly. I always thought you were just easygoing, he said. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was accurate. That's what I thought too, I said quietly. He looked up. So what changed? I paused, because that question deserved a real answer. You did, I said. His expression shifted immediately. What? Your sister, your father, I continued. Not in a bad way. Just over time. He shook his head. I don't get it. You didn't have to, I said gently. Because I adjusted. He leaned forward slightly. And now, you're not. No, I said. Now I'm not. Silence stretched between us again. But it wasn't as sharp as before. More thoughtful. More real. After a moment, he spoke again. Dad thinks you're trying to embarrass him, he said. I sighed softly. Of course he does. He's not used to this, Daniel added. Neither am I replied. That made him pause. You seem pretty comfortable, he said. I shook my head. I'm not. I admitted. I'm just committed. That word landed. I could see it. Committed to what he asked. To not disappearing anymore, I said. His brow furrowed. You weren't disappearing. I held his gaze. Daniel, I said softly, when was the last time you asked me what I wanted? He opened his mouth, then closed it, because he didn't have an answer. That's not your fault, I added quickly. It's just how things became. He leaned back again, running a hand through his hair. I never thought of it like that, he said. I know, I replied. We sat there for a while, the noise of the pool filling the silence. Then he said something I didn't expect. Do you regret it? I blinked. Regret what? Letting things be that way for so long, he clarified. I thought about it, really thought about it. Then I shook my head. No, I said, because it got us here. He frowned slightly. That doesn't sound like regret. It's not, I said. It's understanding. He nodded slowly. I think I need time to understand it too, he admitted. That's fair, I said. For the first time since this whole thing started, that felt like progress. Not agreement, not resolution, but willingness, and sometimes that's enough to start. As we stood to leave, he hesitated. Mom. Yes. I don't want this to break everything, he said. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't seen before. Not just my son, a man trying. It won't, I said, if we're willing to build something better. He nodded, slowly. Then he left. I stood there for a moment after he was gone, letting that conversation settle, because it mattered. More than the argument at dinner. More than the silence. This was different. This was a crack in the old structure, and through it, something new could grow. But not everyone was going to see it that way. Later that afternoon, I ran into Richard. Not planned, not scheduled, just inevitable. He was standing near the entrance to the resort talking on the phone, his posture stiff, his tone controlled, but I could hear the edge in his voice. "That's not how this works," he was saying. "I'll handle it when I get back." He ended the call as he noticed me. Of course he did. "Pamela," he said, his voice shifting instantly into that familiar authoritative tone. Richard I replied. We stood there facing each other. No buffer, no audience. Just us. "We need to talk," he said. I almost smiled. Everyone seems to think that. "This isn't a joke," he snapped. "I know," I said calmly. He stepped closer. "I don't understand what you're doing," he said. "And frankly, I don't like it." There it was. Honest. Direct. At least he wasn't pretending. "I'm not asking you to like it. I don't understand what you're doing," he said. "And frankly, I don't like it." There it was. Honest. Direct. At least he wasn't pretending. "I'm not asking you to like it," I said. "I'm asking you to respect it." His jaw tightened. "That's not how a marriage works." I felt something shift again. Deeper this time. Because this wasn't just about behavior. This was about belief. "Then maybe," I said slowly, "we need to rethink how our marriage works." That hit hard. I saw it in his eyes. "You're going too far," he said. "No," I replied. "I've just been too far behind for a long time." He shook his head. "This is coming out of nowhere." "No," I said quietly. "It's been building for years. You just didn't see it because I didn't show it." He exhaled sharply. "So what now?" he asked. I paused. Because this was the moment, the real one. Now I said we decide if we're willing to change or stay stuck. His expression hardened again. "I don't need to change," he said. I nodded slowly. "I thought you might say that." "And what does that mean?" he challenged. "It means," I said, holding his gaze, "that I might be the only one who does." The silence that followed felt heavier than anything we had said so far. Because this wasn't just tension anymore. This was a line, drawn clearly, and for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't stepping back from it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because I was anxious. Not because I was afraid. But because something inside me had finally woken up. And once you wake up like that, you don't go back to sleep easily. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation. Daniel's confusion, Emily's fear, Richard's resistance. 3 different reactions. 3 different relationships, and for the first time, I wasn't trying to fix any of them. I was trying to understand what I actually wanted moving forward. That question used to feel impossible. Now it felt necessary. Around midnight, I got up and walked out onto the balcony. The air was warm, the resort quieting down. Most people were asleep, or content, or pretending to be. I leaned against the railing and let myself feel everything at once. The anger, the sadness, the clarity. Because they all existed together. And for once, I didn't push any of it away. The next morning, I made a decision. Not a dramatic one. Not something that would explode everything overnight. Something quieter, but far more powerful. I booked my own return flight, earlier than planned. Not first class, not to prove anything, just on my terms. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not because I was hiding it, because I wanted to sit with the decision first. Make sure it was truly mine. By mid-morning, I felt steady, certain, so I texted the group. "I'm flying home tomorrow. I've changed my ticket." The response came quickly. Too quickly. "Richard, why would you do that?" "Daniel, already that's not the plan." Emily. Mom, is everything okay? I stared at the messages. Same pattern, concern mixed with control. I typed back, I'm okay. I just want to go home. The phone rang almost immediately. Richard. Of course, I answered. Pamela? What is this? He demanded. It's a decision, I said calmly. It's impulsive, he snapped. No, I replied. It's intentional. You're cutting the trip short over a disagreement, he said. I exhaled slowly. It's not just a disagreement. Then what is it? He pressed. It's me choosing not to go back to the way things were, I said. A sharp pause. That doesn't require leaving early, he said. It does for me, I replied. Why? He demanded. Because I need distance, because I need space, because I need to prove to myself that I can make a decision without being talked out of it. But I didn't say all of that. Instead, I said something simpler. Because I want to. Silence. Then colder. You're being unreasonable. There it was, the word he always used when I stepped outside his expectations. I felt the old reflex again, the urge to soften, to explain more, to make it acceptable, but I didn't. I don't agree, I said. Another pause, longer this time. Do the kids know he asked? Yes. And you're fine just leaving them here? He said. That one hit, not because it was true, because it was designed to make me feel guilty. I'm not abandoning anyone, I said. I'm going home a day early. You're making a statement, he said. Yes, I replied. I am. He didn't like that. I could hear it in the way he breathed, sharp, controlled. Fine, he said finally. Do what you want. And just like that, the call ended. No resolution, no understanding, just distance. But this time, I didn't chase after it. I didn't call back. I didn't send a follow-up message. I let it be, because that too was part of the change. A few minutes later, Emily showed up at my door. She didn't knock softly. She knocked like she was worried. Mom. I opened the door. She stepped inside immediately. You're leaving? She asked. Yes, I said. Why? She pressed. I gestured for her to sit down. Because I need to. She didn't knock softly. She knocked like she was worried. Mom? I opened the door. She stepped inside immediately. You're leaving? She asked. Yes, I said. Why? She pressed. I gestured for her to sit down. Because I need to, I said. That's not an answer, she said. It is, I replied gently. Just not the one you want. She sat down slowly, looking at me like she was trying to solve something. I thought things were getting better, she said. They are, I said. For me. She frowned. That sounds selfish. I nodded. It does. And you're okay with that? She asked. I held her gaze. For the first time, yes. She looked down at her hands. That's hard to hear, she admitted. I know, I said. Silence filled the room. Not tense, just heavy. After a moment, she spoke again. Dad thinks you're trying to punish him, she said. I sighed softly. I'm not punishing anyone. Then what are you doing? She asked. I leaned forward slightly. I'm choosing myself, I said. She looked up at me, and I saw it. The conflict, the understanding fighting with everything she had been taught. That feels like you're choosing against us, she said quietly. I shook my head. It's not against you, I said. It's just not for you. That landed. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she just sat there thinking. And that was new. Eventually, she stood up. I don't know how. Eventually, she stood up. I don't know how to feel about this, she admitted. That's okay, I said. Are you sure you're not running away? She asked. I smiled faintly. No, I said. I think this is the first time I'm actually walking towards something. To feel about this, she admitted. That's okay, I said. Are you sure you're not running away? She asked. I smiled faintly. No, I said. I think this is the first time I'm actually walking towards something. She nodded slowly, still unsure, but not arguing, and that mattered. Before she left, she hugged me again, not as tight as before, but more thoughtful. Like she was trying to understand me as a person, not just as her mother. After she left, I packed my suitcase. Carefully, deliberately, each item folded with intention. Not rushed, not emotional, just steady. Because this wasn't an escape. It was a step. And I knew something they didn't. This wasn't the end of the conflict. It was the beginning of something bigger. Because when I got home, things weren't just going to go back to normal. They couldn't. Not anymore. And deep down, I think they were starting to realize that too. The airport felt strangely familiar. Not because I had just been here days ago, but because something inside me had changed since then. Last time I stood there confused, abandoned, trying to make sense of what had just happened. This time, I walked in alone. But I wasn't abandoned. I had chosen this, and that made all the difference. I checked in, printed my boarding pass, and moved through security with a calm I didn't recognize. No rushing, no anxiety, just clarity. As I sat at the gate, I watched families around me. A couple arguing quietly over seats. A mother calming a crying child. A husband carrying too many bags while his wife scrolled on her phone. Normal. Messy. Human. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to fit into any version of that. I just observed. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Did you already leave? I typed back. At the gate. A few seconds later, he called. I answered. You're really doing this, he said. There was no accusation in his voice this time. Just a message from Daniel. Did you already leave? I typed back. At the gate. A few seconds later, he called. I answered. You're really doing this, he said. There was no accusation in his voice this time. Just realization. Yes, I said. A pause. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, he admitted. Okay, I think I didn't see it because it worked for me, he said. That honesty caught me off guard. That's usually how it works, I replied gently. Another pause. I don't want to be that kind of person, he said. You're not, I said. You're just learning. He exhaled. I wish you didn't have to leave for us to figure this out, he said. So do I admitted. Silence again, but this one felt softer. Will you be okay? He asked. I smiled faintly. I think I finally will be. That seemed to settle something in him. Call me when you land, he asked. I will. Okay, love you, Mom. I love you too. The call ended, and I sat there holding my phone, feeling something unexpected. Hope. Not the kind that fixes everything overnight. The kind that grows slowly, quietly. Because someone is willing to change. Boarding was announced shortly after. I stood up, picked up my bag, and joined the line. No hesitation, no second guessing, just forward. The flight itself was uneventful, which in a strange way felt perfect. No drama, no confrontation, just hours of quiet space to think, to process, to breathe. I didn't distract myself with movies. I didn't scroll endlessly. I just sat with my thoughts, and for once, they weren't overwhelming. They were organized, clear. When we landed, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Relief. Not because I escaped something, because I stepped into something new. Home. But not the same home I had left, because I wasn't the same person returning to it. The house was quiet when I walked in. Of course it was. Everyone else was still at the resort. I set my suitcase down in the hallway and just stood there for a moment, taking it all in. The familiarity, the silence, the space. Then I did something simple. I made myself a cup of tea. Not because I needed it, because I wanted to. That small act felt significant. I sat at the kitchen table holding the warm cup in my hands. No one asking me anything, no one needing anything, no one expecting anything. Just me. And for the first time in years, that felt enough. The next day, reality started to settle in. Not the emotional kind, the practical kind. Bills, schedules, responsibilities. But even those felt different. Because I wasn't carrying resentment with them anymore. I was choosing how I showed up. That morning, I received an email from a law firm. At first, I thought it was spam, until I saw the name. Richard's business partner. My stomach tightened. I opened it. Mrs. Turner, we would like to schedule a meeting regarding certain financial matters that may concern you directly. I stopped reading. My heart started beating. I stopped reading. My heart started beating faster. Financial matters. Concern me directly. That didn't make sense. Richard handled all of that. Always had. I scrolled down. Documentation suggests Joe in ownership and potential liabilities aiding faster. Financial matters. Concern me directly. That didn't make sense. Richard handled all of that. Always had. I scrolled down. Documentation suggests joint ownership and potential liabilities. Joint ownership, liabilities. I felt the ground shift slightly beneath me. Not physically, but mentally. Because suddenly, there was a part of my life I didn't understand. At all. I read the email again. Slower this time. Carefully. Each word hitting harder than the last. Then I sat back in my chair, staring at nothing. Because this wasn't just about control anymore. This was about something deeper, something bigger, something I had never questioned before. My phone rang. Emily. I hesitated, then answered. Hey, I said. Mom, are you home? She asked. Yes. There was a pause. We're flying back tomorrow, she said. Okay. Another pause. Dad's been quiet, she added. I almost smiled. I can imagine. Daniel told me you talked, she said. We did. And she pressed. He's thinking, I said. That's new, she admitted. We both laughed lightly. A small moment of connection. Then she spoke again. I've been thinking too, she said. About what? About what you said about choosing yourself, she replied. I waited. I don't fully understand it, she admitted. But I don't think you're wrong. That surprised me. I appreciate that, I said softly. I said softly. I just don't want to lose you in the process, she added. That hit deeper than anything else. You won't, I said. I'm not going anywhere. You kind of did, she pointed out. I moved, I corrected gently. Not away from you, just toward myself. And to lose you in the process, she added. That hit deeper than anything else. You won't, I said. I'm not going anywhere. You kind of did, she pointed out. I moved, I corrected gently. Not away from you, just toward myself. She was quiet for a moment. I think I need to learn what that looks like, she said. So do I admitted. Another pause, then softer. We'll figure it out, right? I smiled. Yes, I said. We will. After the call ended, I looked back at the email. Still open on my laptop, still waiting, because whatever was in there, it was about to change everything. And this time, I wasn't going to ignore it. I didn't wait long. By the next morning, I had replied to the email. Short, direct. Yes, I am available. Please send details. I almost didn't recognize myself. Old me would have waited, delayed, maybe even ignored it until Richard got home. But that version of me wasn't here anymore. The meeting was scheduled for that afternoon, downtown, a law office I had never been to, a place I probably should have known about but didn't. That thought alone made my stomach tighten. How much of my life had I simply trusted without question? Too much. When I arrived, everything felt cold. Not unfriendly, just precise. Glass walls, neutral tones. People moving with purpose. I checked in, gave my name, and waited. A man in his early 50s approached me after a few minutes. Mrs. Turner? He asked. Yes, I'm Michael Grant, he said, extending his hand. Thank you for coming in. His tone was professional, measured, but there was something else underneath it. Concern. That made me uneasy. He led me into a conference room, closed the door, sat across from me, and placed a folder on the table. Thick. Too thick. Before we begin, he said carefully, I want to confirm how familiar are you with your husband's business holdings? I blinked. Not very, I admitted. Richard handles all of that. He nodded slowly. I see. That wasn't a good sign. What is this about? I asked. He paused, choosing his words. There are several properties and investments under joint ownership between you and your husband, he explained. Okay, some of those assets are currently under review due to irregularities. My heart dropped. Irregularities, I repeated. Yes, he said. Financial discrepancies. Potential liabilities. I stared at him, trying to process. That doesn't make sense, I said. Richard would have told me. He didn't respond immediately. And that silence told me everything. Mrs. Turner, he said gently in situations like this, not all parties are always fully informed. Not all parties. Meaning me. I felt something cold settle in my chest. So, what does this mean? I asked. He opened the folder, turned it toward me. There are documents here that require your attention, he said. Signatures, agreements, financial responsibilities. I looked down. Page after page of things I didn't recognize. Accounts, properties, numbers, all tied to my name, my signature, my life. Except I had never really seen any of it before. I didn't know about this, I said quietly. I understand, he replied. Am I in trouble? I asked. He shook his head slightly. Not necessarily, but you are involved. Involved. That word felt heavier than trouble. I understand, he replied. Am I in trouble? I asked. He shook his head slightly. Not necessarily, But you are involved. Involved. That word felt heavier than trouble, because it meant I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't step back. I was already in it. How much? I asked. He hesitated. Significant, he said carefully. My chest tightened. Can you be more specific? He exhaled. Several $1 million in potential liability. I felt like the air had been knocked out of me. Millions. Not thousands. Not manageable. Millions. How is that possible? I whispered. Some of the investments appear to have been leveraged, he explained, and not all of them are performing as expected. Leveraged. Risk. Debt. Words I had never needed to understand before. Because I trusted him. Why wasn't I told, I asked? Michael didn't answer that directly. I can't speak to your husband's decisions, he said. Of course he couldn't, but I already knew the answer, because I had lived it. Richard didn't tell me because he didn't think I needed to know, because I had never pushed to know, because I had allowed that dynamic. Until now. I leaned back in my chair, trying to steady myself. What are my options, I asked. That was the question that mattered, not what happened. What I could do now. Michael nodded. There are a few paths forward, he said, but each depends on your level of involvement moving forward. I'm listening. You can remain passive, he said. Allow your husband to handle everything. I almost laughed. That option no longer existed. Or, I asked. Or you can actively engage, he continued. Review the accounts, understand the risks, potentially protect your individual interests, protect myself. That word hit differently. Does that mean separating finances, I asked. In some cases, yes, he said, or at least clarifying ownership and responsibility. I nodded slowly, because this wasn't just financial. This was structural. My entire life. The way it had been built. The roles we had played. Everything was connected to this moment. I want to understand everything I said finally. Michael gave a small nod. I thought you might. He slid another document toward me. Then we start here. For the next 2 hours, I listened. Carefully. Took notes. Asked questions. A lot of questions. More than I had asked in years. And with each answer, a clearer picture formed. Not just of the finances, of my marriage, because the same pattern was there. Control, assumption, silence, and me trusting it. Until now. When the meeting ended, I felt exhausted, but not weak, different, stronger, because knowledge does that, even when it's uncomfortable. As I walked out of the building, my phone buzzed again. Richard. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I answered. I got a call from Michael, he said immediately. Of course he did. He mentioned you met with him, Richard added. Yes, I said. A pause. What did he tell you? He asked. Straight to the point. No pretense. Enough, I replied. Silence. Then tighter. You shouldn't be getting involved in this. There it was again. The same tone, the same belief, the same line. And for the first time, it didn't intimidate me. I'm already involved, I said. You don't understand how complex this is, he said. Then help me understand, I replied. Another pause, longer this time. That's not necessary, he said. I closed my eyes briefly. Because that answer confirmed everything. It is to me, I said. You're overreacting, he snapped. No, I said calmly. I'm finally reacting. Silence, sharp, heavy, then colder than before. We'll discuss this when I get home. I took a breath. No, I said. That stopped him. What? We'll discuss it when I decide I'm ready, I said. Another pause. What is that supposed to mean? He demanded. It means, I said slowly, this isn't just your decision anymore. And just like that, the balance shifted. Not completely. Not yet. But enough. Enough for him to feel it. Enough for me to know I wasn't standing in the same place anymore. The house didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt waiting, like it knew something was about to happen. I woke up early the next morning, not because I had to, but because my mind wouldn't let me stay asleep. Everything from yesterday kept replaying. The numbers, the documents, the realization. I wasn't just emotionally overlooked in my marriage. I had been structurally sidelined. Legally, financially, completely. And now that I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my notebook. Not the one I used for groceries or reminders. A new one, because this needed space. I started writing everything I remembered from the meeting. Every term, every number, every question I still had. And as I wrote, something shifted. This didn't feel like fear anymore. It felt like preparation. Around noon, I heard the front door open. Voices. Footsteps. They were back. Earlier than I expected. I stayed seated, didn't rush to greet them, didn't pretend everything was normal. Because it wasn't. Emily walked into the kitchen first. She froze when she saw me. Mom! I looked up. Hey! Her expression softened. You're really here, she said, like she was still adjusting to it. I told you I would be. She walked over and hugged me. This time, it felt different again. Less uncertain, more grounded. I missed you, she said quietly. I missed you too. Daniel came in next. He gave me a small, tentative smile. Hey, Mom. Hey. He didn't hug me, but he stayed close. That said enough. And then Richard. He stepped into the kitchen like nothing had changed, like this was just another day. But the air shifted the second he walked in, tight, heavy, real. Pamela, he said. Richard. No hug, no softness, just acknowledgement. Emily looked between us. Daniel shifted his weight. They both felt it. The tension, the difference. Can we talk? Richard asked. I closed my notebook. Yes. Emily hesitated. Should we? No, Richard said quickly. This is between us. I stood up slowly. That's fine, I said. We moved into the living room, the same space where we had had countless conversations. But this one wasn't going to be like the others. I sat down. He remained standing for a moment, then sat across from me, a deliberate distance between us. I spoke with Michael, he began. I know. He shouldn't have involved you, he said. I felt a small spark of frustration. He didn't, I replied. I asked. That stopped him briefly. Then he continued. You don't understand the full picture, he said. Then explain it, I said. His jaw tightened slightly. It's complicated. I have time. Silence. He studied me, like he was trying to figure out who I was sitting in front of him, because I wasn't the same woman he had left at the airport. Some of the investments didn't go as planned. he said finally. That's not what I asked, I replied. His eyes narrowed slightly. What do you want to know? Everything, I said. That word landed heavy. He leaned back slightly, exhaled, then began. Piece by piece, investment by investment, decision by decision. And as he spoke, the pattern became clear. He hadn't just made risky choices. He had hidden them, delayed telling me, avoided involving me. Not because he thought I couldn't understand, because he didn't want to deal with the questions, the resistance, the accountability. I was protecting you, he said at one point. I almost laughed. From what I asked. Stress, he replied. Responsibility. I shook my head slowly. No, I said. You were protecting yourself. That hit. I saw it in his face. The flicker. The truth he didn't want to admit. That's not fair, he said. It is, I replied calmly. You made decisions that affected both of us without me. I handled it, he said. Did you? I asked quietly. Silence, because now we both knew the answer. Not completely, not successfully, not honestly. This is how it's always worked, he said finally. Yes, I said. That's the problem. He looked at me again, longer this time. You've changed, he said. I nodded. Yes. And what does that mean for us? He asked. That question. That was the real one. I took a breath. Because this wasn't about winning or proving a point. This was about truth. It means things can't go back to the way they were, I said. His expression hardened slightly. That's not very helpful. It's honest. And what do you want? He asked. There it was. The question I had spent years avoiding. Because I didn't think I was allowed to want anything. But now I did. I want transparency, I said. I want to understand our finances. I want to be involved in decisions that affect my life. He listened. But I could see it, the resistance. So you want control, he said. I shook my head. No, I said. I want partnership. That word sat between us, heavy, unfamiliar. Because we had never truly had one. I've been carrying this for years, he said. I didn't ask you to carry it alone, I replied. You didn't ask anything, he shot back. And there it was, the truth, sharp, uncomfortable, accurate. He wasn't wrong. I hadn't asked, because I didn't think I could, because I had accepted the role I was given, until now. You're right, I said quietly. That surprised him. I didn't ask. I continued. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have told me. He didn't respond, because he knew that was true. We sat in silence. Not angry, just exposed. Years of patterns laid out in front of us. No pretending, no avoiding, just reality. Finally, he spoke again. What happens next? He asked. I looked at him, really looked at him, not as the man who controlled everything, but as someone who is now uncertain too. We figure it out, I said. Together? That depends, I replied. On what? On whether you're willing to change this with me? I said. Another long pause, because this wasn't a small adjustment. This was a shift in everything. Our roles, our power, our future. I don't know how to do that, he admitted. For the first time, he sounded unsure, human, not in control. And strangely, that gave me hope. We can learn, I said, if you want to. He looked at me, searching, weighing. deciding. And in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't about forcing him to change. It was about whether he would choose to. Just like I had chosen to change myself. And whatever happened next would come from that choice. Not pressure, not fear, choice. I didn't expect the next few days to feel quiet. Not peaceful, not easy, just quiet. Like everything was settling into a new shape. Richard and I didn't argue after that conversation, but we didn't pretend either. We moved carefully around each other, more aware, more honest, more cautious. And strangely, that felt better than the illusion we had been living in before. The following morning, Richard asked if I would sit down with him again. Not in the living room this time, at the dining table, with papers, documents, real things. "I want to go through everything with you," he said. That alone told me something had shifted, because before, he would have handled it, decided it, managed it, without me. Now he was asking, and I noticed that. I nodded. Okay, we spent hours there, side by side, not across from each other like opponents, next to each other like something closer to partners. He explained accounts, investments, debts, risks. And this time, he didn't simplify things, didn't brush over details, didn't avoid my questions. When I asked something, he answered, even when it made him uncomfortable, even when it made both of us uncomfortable. And there were moments where the truth hurt, deeply. Like when I realized just how close we had come to losing more than I thought, or how long he had been carrying that stress alone. Not because he had to, but because we had built a life where he thought he did. "You should have told me," I said at one point. "I know," he replied quietly. That was different too. No defensiveness, no excuses, just acknowledgement, and that mattered. By the third day, something unexpected happened. We weren't just reviewing the past. We started planning the future, together. "What if we restructure this?" I asked, pointing at one of the documents. He leaned in. "Explain what you're thinking." That simple sentence, it stayed with me, because no one had asked me that in a long time. Not like that, not seriously. So I did. I explained, carefully, slowly. And he listened, really listened. We didn't agree on everything. There were disagreements, moments of tension, but they felt different. Not like before. Before, disagreements felt like walls. Now they felt like work. Work we were doing together. Emily noticed it first. "You guys are?" But they felt different. Not like before. Before, disagreements felt like walls. Now they felt like work. Work we were doing together. Emily noticed it first. "You guys are different," she said one evening. We were all sitting in the living room. A normal night, or at least something close to it. "How?" I asked. She shrugged. "Quieter, but better." Daniel nodded. "Yeah, less weird." I smiled slightly. "You'll take that." They exchanged a glance. Then Emily asked something I didn't expect. "Are you okay?" she said. Not to Richard, to me. I paused. Because that question used to be easy. I would have said yes without thinking, but now I wanted to answer honestly. "I am," I said slowly, "and I'm working on being even better." She smiled. "That sounds like you." But I knew it didn't used to. Later that night, after the kids went to bed, Richard and I sat outside. The air was cool, still. For once, the silence between us didn't feel heavy. It felt open. I didn't realize how far apart we had gotten. he said quietly. I looked at him. We didn't said quietly. I looked at him. We didn't get there overnight, I replied. No, he said. We didn't. We sat with that truth for a moment. Years of habits, of assumptions, of roles we never questioned, until everything cracked. I thought I was doing the right thing, get there overnight, I replied. No, he said. We didn't. We sat with that truth for a moment. Years of habits, of assumptions, of roles we never questioned, until everything cracked. I thought I was doing the right thing, he added. I know, I said, and I meant it. That was the complicated part. He wasn't a villain, and I wasn't a victim. Not entirely. We were two people who had slowly built something, unbalanced, and then lived inside it until it stopped working. I don't want to go back to that, he said. Neither do I. Another pause. Then he asked the question that mattered. Do you think we can fix this? I didn't answer right away, because I had learned something important. Quick answers weren't always honest answers. I think, I started slowly, we can build something better. He looked at me. Is that the same thing? No, I said. It's harder. He let out a small breath. Yeah, that makes sense. We sat there a little longer, not trying to solve everything, not rushing to conclusions, just being in the moment. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not relief, not happiness. Something deeper. Respect. For him. For myself. For what we were trying to do. The next morning, I made a decision. Not out of fear, not out of anger, out of clarity. I called Michael. I'd like to move forward with reviewing everything, I said, and I want to make sure I'm fully informed on all financial matters going forward. Of course, he replied, and I'd like copies of all documents sent directly to me as well. There was a brief pause. Understood, he said. When I hung up, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt in control, not of everything, but of myself, and that was enough. Later, as I stood in the kitchen, sunlight coming through the window, I thought back to the airport. That moment, standing there alone, watching my family leave without me. At the time, it felt like the worst thing that could happen, like I had been forgotten, left behind. But now, I saw it differently. It wasn't the end. It was the interruption. The break in a pattern I didn't even realize I was stuck in. If that hadn't happened, I would still be that woman, waiting, accepting, not asking, not knowing, but it did happen. And because of that, I changed. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to ask questions, enough to demand honesty, enough to choose myself without abandoning the people I love. And that changed everything. After everything I went through, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes the moment that feels like rejection is actually redirection. For years, I believed love meant staying quiet, trusting without question, and keeping the peace at any cost. I thought being a good wife meant not asking too much, not pushing too hard, and definitely not challenging the person you built your life with. But I was wrong. Love without honesty isn't love, it's comfort. And comfort can quietly turn into distant silence and eventually disconnection. What I learned is this: your voice matters even in a long marriage, especially in a long marriage. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to understand your own life. You are allowed to be part of decisions that affect your future. And most importantly, you are allowed to grow, even if it makes other people uncomfortable at first. Change doesn't always mean walking away. Sometimes it means standing your ground and rebuilding something stronger, something more equal, something more real. If you've ever felt overlooked, unheard, or like you were slowly disappearing in your own life, I want you to know you're not alone, and it's never too late to take your place back. If this story resonated with you, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had a moment that changed how you saw your relationship or yourself? Leave a comment and share where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. I read every single one, and your stories truly matter. And if you want more stories like this, real, emotional, and meaningful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You never know which story might be the one that speaks directly to you.